welcome to Aura of Purpose. May radiant health, overflowing financial abundance, unconditional love, and profound inner peace find their way into your life today. May your spiritual awakening continue to elevate your frequency, guiding you toward your highest timeline. Take a deep breath, chosen one. You have officially arrived, and it is no accident that you are sitting here. You crawled through the trenches of low vibrational energy, surviving spiritual battles that would have completely shattered anyone else. And now, the universe is welcoming you onto the main stage of your own reality. The frequency of the air around you has shifted, hasn't it? Even your silence now carries a heavy, undeniable divine weight. Think about the people who used to laugh at your journey, the ones who projected their own shadows onto your light. It is quite amusing how silent their mouths have become these days. Their entire aura glitches the moment you step into the room. They can feel your high vibration before you even utter a single word, and it absolutely drives their unhealed egos insane. For so long, they tried to convince you that you were insignificant, trying to keep you trapped in a lower dimension. Look at them scrambling now, desperately trying to decode the radiant energy you emit. The same individuals who swore you were delusional, who demanded you stay in a safe, mediocre lane, are now whispering your name in rooms you were once excluded from. They secretly monitor your energetic expansion in private, thinking you are blind to their curiosity. They all bet on your energetic collapse. But instead, you alchemized the negativity and became the highest version of yourself, the exact divine anomaly their worst nightmares warned them about. You morphed your deepest wounds into spiritual weapons, constructing a new reality entirely from scratch. Picture a scenario that perfectly captures this energetic mismatch. Someone sitting in a pristine corporate office, wearing an expensive suit, leans across their desk. They adjust their glasses, throwing a condescending question your way, fully expecting to lower your vibration and put you in your place. They ask you, who exactly trained you? They ask it with an expectation of a neat little label, a recognizable program, or a list of 3D credentials they can process in their limited, matrix-bound system. They desperately want to shrink your infinite soul into a measurable category. They seek proof of an origin they can trace, approve, control, or simply dismiss. But you do not play by the rules of the low-frequency matrix. You refuse to hand them a comforting, logical backstory that fits neatly into their conditioned minds. Instead, you simply lean back, your breathing steady and anchored in your divine truth. You look at them like a warrior who has already survived spiritual warfare far worse than any worldly threat they could ever manifest. And when you look them in the eye and reply that nobody trained you, the entire frequency of the room shatters. Their pens freeze, their shoulders tense up with unconscious anxiety, and for a fleeting second, their professional mask completely dissolves. What you see in their eyes is not confusion, but pure, unfiltered fear trying to disguise itself as authority. You just cracked their rigid illusion of hierarchy, because you were not shaped within the four walls of an elite classroom, nor were you molded by some recognized matrix mentor. You were forged in the silent shadows, in the depths of late nights, during those heavy phases where nobody understood your spiritual isolation. You were built during the agonizing breakdowns and the quiet, miraculous rebuilds that nobody ever witnessed. You were sculpted by the universe itself, directly guided by source energy, not by some outdated institutional curriculum. That is precisely why their predictive algorithms and limited logic can never anticipate your next move. You are the glitch in their matrix, the ultimate question mark that their fragile egos cannot resolve. and they absolutely resent it. They hate that you ascended without asking for their worldly permission. They hate that you were not supposed to survive the dark nights of the soul that were specifically designed to erase your light. They despise the fact that every single time the 3D world tried to bend your spirit, you snapped back with a higher, more intense vibration. You became this untrained, unstoppable force of nature, an energetic anomaly that absolutely nobody can claim credit for. You operate with no blueprint, no earthly manual, and no reverse-engineered instructions. Do you want to know what truly eats at their core? They vividly remember the old, unawakened version of you. They remember the you who used to doubt your divine purpose, the you who questioned your inherent worth simply because of their toxic projections. They remember how you used to walk into a room and instantly shrink your aura, terrified that your light would be deemed too much for their comfort. And now, they are forced to watch you stand powerfully over the ashes, every single lie they constructed around your identity. They cannot fathom how you transitioned from merely trying to survive to becoming an absolutely terrifying force of sovereign power. Let us talk about that monumental energetic shift, that sacred moment when all the chaotic noise inside your mind finally went completely silent. It felt as though the entire universe paused its rotation just to allow you to take a deep, sovereign breath. It was that profound moment right after the heaviest storm, when source energy stopped testing you and finally started propelling you forward. There is a very specific, high vibrational stillness that arrives when you are completely done breaking. It happens when you finally integrate and accept every single spiritual scar, when you release the fear of being misunderstood by lower frequencies. It is the exact moment you realize you no longer need external validation because your very existence has already proven your divine point. Your detractors and spiritual enemies actually felt that frequency shift long before your conscious mind did. Have you ever noticed how the energetic vampires barriers backed off before you even fully stepped into your power? Did you catch how their loud, mocking voices suddenly dropped to a nervous whisper? They began acting disoriented in your presence, as if they were wandering through the karmic aftermath of their own terrible decisions. They recognized that you were evolving into something so vast, so radiant, that they literally lacked the vocabulary to describe it. And it terrified them to their core. You walked away from your traumatic past like a seasoned survivor casually stepping out of a collapsing, burning building. There was no coughing, no dramatic fanfare, no long-winded speech. Just a calm, chilling aura that radiated the message, "I am not the same entity anymore." And in response, the entire external world immediately began adjusting its frequency to match your new vibration. People instinctively started treating you with a newfound reverence, without even understanding why they felt compelled to do so. Doors that were once permanently welded shut suddenly swung wide open for you. Golden opportunities began hunting you down, aligning with your path without you even lifting a finger to apply for them. That is exactly what manifests when the universe finally decides that a chosen one is completely done being underestimated by the matrix. Let us dive even deeper into this energetic dynamic. Do you ever wonder why individuals from your past timelines act so strangely erratic around you now? It is because their minds are stuck remembering the old version of you, yet they are physically standing in the presence of the ascended master you have become. They are desperately trying to map outdated, low-frequency data onto your new, luminous reality, and their mental algorithms just keep breaking. They cannot comprehend how you discovered infinite strength in the exact dark places where most people only find excuses to give up. They do not understand how you kept pushing forward, radiating light when the average person would have remained on the floor, weeping in defeat. They cannot process how you successfully alchemized absolute humiliation into high-octane spiritual fuel. But you understand it perfectly, because you lived it with every cell of your being. You are the rare breed of soul who was actively trained by the harsh sting of betrayal. You were meticulously sharpened by the cold winds of abandonment. You were conditioned by profound loss, and ultimately perfected by the very failures that were supposed to destroy you. Emotional agony was your strictest coach, and deafening silence was your ultimate classroom. Unyielding survival was the only diploma you ever needed. And now, the sleeping world looks at your undeniable mastery and assumes it was purchased from some elite 3D academy. Meanwhile, you just stand there, completely unbothered, with your hands resting in your pockets, radiating the silent truth that you taught yourself every single thing that they are so deeply afraid of. That is exactly why the man in the expensive suit internally panicked. That is why the energetic polarity of the room violently shifted. That is the real reason their fragile, unearned confidence immediately cracked. You are not a predictable, manufactured product of their earthly system. You are the cosmic warning label that they completely forgot to print. Chosen one, this is your divine moment. It is not your moment because some false authority figure placed a crown upon your head. It is your moment precisely because nobody handed you anything. And that sovereign independence is exactly what makes your aura so incredibly dangerous to the established matrix. And listen closely, chosen one. Since you have navigated your way this far into the awakening, since you are one of the few who actually felt that visceral energetic shift when the matrix tried to size you up, I already know, without a shadow of a doubt, that you did not stumble upon this frequency by mere accident. You were guided here by your own intuition. Before we peel back the next intense layer of this cosmic truth, recognize that this marks you as one of the elite few. You are part of the rare collective who were never formally trained, never softly guided, and never handed a convenient map to success. Yet, you still walked into the grand room of life with the kind of overwhelming presence that makes so-called professionals freeze in their tracks. This is the exact moment where the real deconstruction of their illusion begins. This is the step-by-step unraveling of why that one simple question, who trained them, managed to shake every insecure, ego-driven individual within a 10-mile radius. If your soul truly resonates as one of us, you will feel an undeniable magnetic pull to stay anchored in this truth. It feels as though your entire hidden life story is finally being decoded and spoken out loud into the universe. So, settle your energy, tighten the grip on your own infinite power, and prepare to absorb the higher frequencies. Let us dive straight into the heart of the matter. First, they absolutely fear the raw elements that built you from the ground up. It is rather amusing how the loudest, most persistent critics suddenly start stuttering and losing their words. It happens the exact moment they realize you survived traumatic environments that would have folded them like cheap lawn chairs. They honestly have no idea what to do with your energy. And that is arguably the sweetest, most satisfying aspect of this entire spiritual journey. Every single enemy who once smirked at your struggles is now choking on the heavy realization of your power. They are suffocating on the fact that you were forged in a fiery crucible where they would never have lasted a single day. They received their training in perfectly safe, sterile environments, surrounded by padded walls and endless backup plans. But you trained in the deafening silence of your own survival. They always had a crowd of people to politely applaud their tiny, incremental progress. You had absolutely no one clapping for you. They relied on gentle mentors to hold their hands and guide them through minor inconveniences. You had nothing but empty, echoing rooms. You had severe real-world consequences waiting to violently smack you down if you made a single misstep. And now they are entirely confused by your existence. Now they are deeply intimidated by the aura you project. Now they are quietly whispering to one another, desperately asking who could have possibly trained you. They speak of you as if you are some impossible anomaly that simply should not exist within their logical framework. Good, let that unsettling reality sink deep into their bones. Because here is the raw, unvarnished truth that hits their ego like a physical blow. You did not originate from their comfortable, predictable world. You were not handcrafted by their neat, orderly systems and institutions. You were never officially certified, authorized, magically approved, or rubber-stamped by the gatekeepers. You were completely and utterly forged. You were not politely instructed, but rather molded within the very chaos that they spend their entire lives running away from. You were strengthened by fierce, raging storms that they never possessed the spiritual guts to walk through. Every single failure you endured, every bitter betrayal you faced, every agonizing night you were forced to rebuild your shattered mind completely from scratch. All of it became the ultimate, master-level training that they secretly wish they could purchase. And that raw, untamed power is exactly what scares them to death. You did not slowly climb their corporate or societal ladder. You set the entire ladder ablaze and effortlessly walked up the ascending smoke. They look at your radiant success and genuinely feel insulted by your very existence. In their minds, they ask, how dare you become this masterful without our expert guidance? How dare you possess deep cosmic knowledge that you never learned inside our pristine classrooms? How dare you stand before us, perfectly calm and razor-sharp, like a seasoned warrior who just survived a brutal battlefield? A battlefield that they have only ever witnessed on cheesy motivational posters. That is the permanent, aching bruise your high vibration leaves on their fragile egos. And here is the profound part that they will never, ever admit out loud, yet they feel it vibrating deep within their very bones. You completely shattered their grand illusion. They truly believed that authentic power only flowed from recognized institutions, elite connections, and fancy credentials. But then you boldly walked in, armed with absolutely nothing but your battle scars, your raw instinct, and your self-taught precision. And in a single moment, they were forced to realize that their entire structural hierarchy is nothing but a cosmic joke. You are the breathing proof that their rigid system is not the ultimate source of true greatness. You are the undeniable evidence they desperately hoped would never actually appear in their reality. And yes, chosen one, I know that some quiet part of your soul still wonders. Why do they constantly react to my energy like that? Why does my mere presence make them feel so incredibly uncomfortable and defensive? It is simply because your aura reminds them of their own severe limitations. While they were busy chasing superficial worldly approval, you were completely focused on becoming an unstoppable force of nature. While they were busy networking and shaking hands, you were busy surviving the trenches. While they were comfortably studying theories in a book, you were out there wrestling with life completely barehanded. They memorized safe, step-by-step instructions. You, on the other hand, memorized the intimate texture of pain and transformation. They learned their lessons from standardized textbooks, while you learned yours from immediate, unforgiving consequences. They practiced their skills in carefully controlled, simulated environments. You practiced your soul's evolution in harsh reality, where failure actually draws blood and breaks bones. Tell me, from a higher perspective, which one of those paths creates the far more dangerous and powerful individual? You are the rare kind of human who exclusively upgraded through extreme adversity. Every single time life took a violent swing at your spirit, it accidentally provided you with master-level training. Being abandoned taught you unshakable, sovereign independence. Profound loneliness became the very whetstone that sharpened your divine intuition. Rejection forced you to become endlessly resourceful and creative. Failure dramatically strengthened your capacity for rapid adaptability. And as for heartbreak, that particular agony made your emotional armor so incredibly resilient that they cannot penetrate it. No matter how hard they try, they absolutely hate that truth. They hate that your entire, formidable skill set was never simply handed to you. It was painstakingly carved into the very fiber of your being. They hate that you refused to crumble and disintegrate the way they all predicted you would. They hate that you built an empire of self without ever pausing to ask for their permission or their validating approval. They deeply resent that every single agonizing setback only served to make your mind smarter, colder, and infinitely sharper. They hate the fact that you can casually walk into any room and immediately read the energetic signature of every single insecurity that is trying to size you up. They despise that you do not require their hollow validation simply because you survived long enough to validate your own divine existence. And they harbor the deepest hatred for the reality that your unyielding strength did not come from a socially acceptable mentor they can shake hands with. It was birthed from a level of spiritual pain and endurance that they cannot even begin to imagine in their wildest dreams. Let us make one thing perfectly, undeniably clear. The fact that you are self-forged does not mean you were simply reckless. It means you were forced to learn the absolute hardest way possible, the exact path that the majority of humanity will do anything to avoid. You learned how to breathe rhythmically through total chaos. You learned how to solve impossible problems while standing entirely alone. You learned how to sit in the deafening silence of your own mind without running away in terror. You learned how to rise to the top without a single round of applause. You learned how to trust your own gut instincts infinitely more than the fleeting opinions of the masses. You learned how to grow your roots deep in the pitch-black darkness, in places where nobody ever clapped for your survival. Do you have any idea what that kind of spiritual evolution turns you into? It makes you dangerous in ways their fragile systems are completely untrained and unequipped to handle. And you must admit the universe has a rather brilliant, ironic sense of humor. Because right now, the very same people who doubted your potential are standing directly in front of the magnificent, finished product. They are desperately pretending they did not just spend years actively betting on your total downfall. They genuinely believed they were gathering to watch your final collapse. Meanwhile, you were simply in the chaotic, messy middle of your own divine transformation montage. Just look at how far you have ascended. Look at how you mastered the art of learning. Every single night you stayed awake, exhaustingly figuring things out completely on your own, was a dark chapter they never had to experience. Every single time you physically and mentally dragged yourself out of a deep pit of depression with no external hand reaching down to pull you up, you earned a cosmic badge of honor they will never possess. Every single moment you forced your own soul to evolve without a shred of guidance represents a spiritual milestone they simply cannot relate to. That is exactly why your quiet, unshakable confidence confuses their rigid minds so deeply. It was never manufactured in a boardroom. It was never gifted to you. And it was certainly never taught. It was built brick by agonizing brick, constructed entirely from the rubble of every catastrophic moment that was meant to break you. Do you want another high vibrational truth that will absolutely make your energetic enemies choke? Self-forged individuals do not break the same way ordinary people do. When they fail, they completely collapse into victimhood. But when you fail, you instantly learn and integrate the lesson. When they experience rejection, they quit and retreat to safety. When you face rejection, you use it as friction to level up your entire existence. When they are abandoned, they panic and lose their center. But when you are abandoned, you simply discover a brand new, wildly powerful part of yourself. They rely entirely on external structure, while you rely strictly on divine instinct. They are deeply afraid of the unknown, but you practically grew up inside of it. So now, sitting across from them in that pristine corporate office, watching them try to logically figure you out is nothing short of sheer comedy. They desperately scan your face for signs of formal training, trying to decode where you learned the immense power you possess. They run background checks on your history as if it were a complex crime scene, whispering your name like it is a classified file they cannot access. They want to uncover your blueprint, your precise origin, your makers. But there is absolutely nothing for them to trace because you were not formally taught. You organically evolved, adapting to the spiritual climate instead of being trained by it. You guided your own path when no one else would, and instead of waiting to be approved by the matrix, you simply became undeniable. You are the rare breed of soul who walked through your own agonizing mistakes as if they were obstacle courses, emerging infinitely smarter every single time. You are the warrior who got punched in the face by life and immediately learned how to punch back with 10 times the energetic force. You had to organically grow a mind sharp enough to cut through your own suffocating darkness. And now they are staring at you as if you are something unnatural. But you are not unnatural at all, chosen one. You are simply unrepeatable. Let this profound realization sink deeply into your aura. Your spiritual enemies cannot recreate you. They cannot mimic your battle-tested resilience, and they certainly cannot copy your divine instincts. They can never imitate your cosmic evolution because they completely lack the raw, volatile material that you had to work with. They never had to endure the violent storms you survived, nor do they possess the unbreakable emotional endurance you built in the shadows. That is the core reason they envy you, and the exact reason they fear you. That is why they whisper your name in hushed tones, even when they are desperately pretending not to notice your luminous presence. You did not grow up in the illusion of safety. You grew up in the spiritual fire, and anyone who grows in the fire walks into every single room with a heavy presence. A presence that instantly makes the ones who grew in comfort feel incredibly weak and exposed. This is exactly why they ask who trained them, because the very idea that a sovereign soul like you could exist without a master absolutely terrifies their conditioned minds. But the real cosmic punchline is that nobody trained you, and that is precisely why you are unstoppable. Let us transition to the second layer of this matrix breakdown, the sacred lessons they secretly wish you had never learned. The wild ones, the chosen ones, learn undeniable truths that the classroom kids spend their entire lives running away from. Some of us did not merely study the chapters of a textbook. We actively survived them. Your biggest mistakes were your ultimate professors, and they taught you harder than any prestigious institution ever could. They fear your aura not because you are classically trained, but because you learned the dark, heavy truths that they were far too soft to ever face. Let us drag the spiritual spotlight onto those quiet, invisible years that nobody else saw. The forgotten years, the lonely years, the era when you were absolutely not receiving applause, external recognition, or gentle guidance. The heavy years when you were scientifically and logically supposed to collapse, and yet, miraculously, you did not. Everyone else was comfortably sitting in temperature-controlled lecture halls, highlighting textbooks and rehearsing safe, pre-packaged answers. The matrix system spoon-fed them their reality. Meanwhile, you were existing somewhere the system never dares to visit. You were knee-deep in your own personal chaos, meticulously collecting ancient wisdom straight from your open wounds. You were decoding the universe with nothing but your raw instinct, shaping your own energetic field using spiritual tools you carved entirely by hand. This is the hidden curriculum they do not teach, the one they refuse to even acknowledge exists. Because if they did acknowledge it, they would be forced to admit a devastating truth. They would have to confess that you learned far more in your absolute worst year than they learned in their entire, expensive degree program. And yes, chosen one, I know a part of your mind sometimes wonders, why does my divine path look absolutely nothing like theirs? Why doesn't my story have clear, logical steps, gentle mentors, or clean, easy chapters? The answer is beautifully simple. Your life was never meant to be pretty, predictable, or ordinary. It was meant to be unapologetically powerful. Imagine this contrast in your mind's eye. A group of students sitting in a polished classroom, safely learning about crisis management from a multiple-choice worksheet. Meanwhile, you were out in the world, living through actual crises in real time. You were improvising survival strategies that actually worked, adapting on the fly because your very life depended on it. Because it actually did, their training wheels were still securely fastened, while you were riding straight through hurricanes with absolutely no brakes. Your spiritual education was never structured, it was never safe, and it was certainly never monitored. It was completely raw, unfiltered, and violently honest. Pain never politely waited for you to take out your notebook. Failure never offered you a chance to retake the test. You were learning in real time, with your emotional bruises still fresh, your hands still shaking, and your breathing still unsteady. That is the reason your profound knowledge is permanently carved into your soul. It is not merely memorized, it is fully and completely integrated into your DNA. Imagine this as well. They were busy learning emotional intelligence from a rehearsed TED Talk. While you were learning it the hard way, from someone you deeply trusted stabbing you right in the back, they memorized abstract theories about human behavior, but you actually learned the dark realities of people. They learned their lessons from safe, predictable lectures. You learned from devastating losses so brutal that they completely rewired your nervous system. Tell me, which path do you think produces the sharper, more lethal spiritual instincts? Souls vibrating at your frequency did not just survive the harsh curriculum. You literally became the curriculum. While they were busy collecting certificates as if they were Pokemon cards, you were busy collecting battle scars. Scars that taught you infinitely more about the universe than any framed diploma ever could. They received passing grades simply for participation. You were strictly graded on your raw, bleeding resilience. Their little tests were neatly scheduled in advance. Your ultimate tests showed up completely unannounced at 3 a.m. in the morning. Their assignments were nothing but harmless simulations, but yours were life or death situations. And every single time you successfully navigated one, you leveled up your aura in ways their logical minds still cannot comprehend. Let us talk about how you masterfully built complex systems completely out of broken, shattered parts. They were comfortably learning project management from colorful diagrams. You were actively managing your own chaotic life, trying to hold together a collapsing empire that demanded rebuilding every single day. You did not have access to fancy templates or step-by-step guides. You had pure, unadulterated desperation. You did not have a personal coach. You just had severe consequences breathing heavily down your neck. You had zero resources at your disposal. You only had the grit you aggressively scraped from the very bottom of your spirit when your energy was completely running on fumes. And yet, somehow, against all earthly odds, you figured it out. That is the exact piece of the puzzle that keeps them awake staring at the ceiling at night. You figured out complex truths that nobody ever bothered to teach you. You naturally picked up high-level skills that nobody handed to you. You actively developed razor-sharp instincts that absolutely nobody expected you to possess. You found profound answers in places where nobody even knew existence was possible. And the absolute worst part for their fragile egos, you made it all look entirely natural. Imagine this glaring contrast. They are practicing their negotiation skills in controlled group exercises where everyone is just pretending to care. But you were negotiating with reality itself, battling against towering bills, profound heartbreak, devastating loss, and the crushing mental weight of pure survival. You were never practicing social cues in some safe, supervised workshop. You were reading the energy of people with real-world stakes that actually mattered to your safety. That is exactly why it only takes you one look at someone to instantly recognize their behavioral patterns. You immediately spot their nervous tells and mathematically calculate their exact angle of attack. Meanwhile, they are still awkwardly flipping through the pages of a communication skills handbook, trying to understand what you just felt intuitively. This is the core reality that deeply scares them. You did not learn your lessons in a harmless simulation. You learned them in the violent moment of impact. Every single setback became an intensive case study that you meticulously dissected all by yourself. Every brutal betrayal became raw research material that you coldly analyzed. You studied it until you thoroughly understood the dark anatomy of human manipulation. Every heavy disappointment taught you exactly how to rebuild your expectations without sacrificing your precious soul. Every crushing failure taught you spiritual architecture, showing you how to construct infinitely better structures directly from the ruins of your past. People who have been exclusively trained inside closed systems simply cannot understand that type of accelerated growth. They are far too used to receiving step-by-step instructions, gentle feedback from mentors, and highly structured paths of improvement. You had absolutely none of that luxury. You had deafening silence, agonizing struggle, and an unforgiving universe that demanded you either evolve immediately or completely crumble into dust. You learned how to see divine patterns hidden within the chaos, simply because chaos was the only textbook you were ever issued. You learned how to find solid structure inside of total destruction, because destruction was your permanent environment. You learned how to stay perfectly calm amidst raging storms, because those heavy storms lived right inside your chest for years. That is exactly why your mind operates on a completely different frequency than theirs. Have you ever wondered why you can see right through people so incredibly fast? Why you can physically feel hidden danger long before it actually arrives at your doorstep? why you effortlessly intuit golden opportunities that others remain completely blind to. It is because you learned these things in the unforgiving arena of real life, not through a computer program or a lecture. Your instincts were violently sharpened by sheer necessity. You can literally smell dishonesty, underlying fear, or slight hesitation like thick smoke hanging in the air. Your very survival depended heavily on recognizing those energetic shifts early. Let us address another recurring thought you have undoubtedly had on this journey. Why do I feel so much older than my biological age? Why does it constantly feel as though I have already lived several different lives? It is because, spiritually speaking, you actually have. When you are forced to learn from total collapse, you rapidly age in profound wisdom. When you learn directly from agonizing loss, you exponentially grow in absolute clarity. When you learn from prolonged isolation, you gain a deep patience that nobody could ever teach you. The average people who faced even half of the trauma you went through would still be sitting in therapy, desperately trying to make sense of it all. But you sat in the dark and made perfect sense of it all on your own. You successfully weaponized your deep understanding in a way they could never hope to replicate. They simply memorized academic theory, while you absorbed undeniable universal truth. They blindly followed the established steps, while you followed the fierce call of survival. They built their fragile confidence based purely on external praise, whereas you built your unshakable confidence based on solid, undeniable proof. That is exactly why your frequency never cracks under extreme pressure and why theirs instantly falls apart at the first sign of minor discomfort. Imagine this final, devastating comparison. They learned critical thinking from filling out worksheets, while you learned it from navigating dangerous situations where a single wrong choice could ruin absolutely everything. They learned resilience from watching inspirational videos on the internet. You learned it from physically dragging yourself out of deep emotional graves, with absolutely no hand reaching down to grab onto yours. They learned leadership from managing simple group projects, but you learned it from being the only person in the world you could actually depend on. You did not become this dangerous simply because someone handed you a book of knowledge. You became an energetic threat because you hunted knowledge down like it was prey. You aggressively wrestled it into understanding, dragged it back through the dirt, and consumed the truth entirely raw. You did not just learn how to merely survive the darkness. You learned how to completely dominate it. This is the hidden, brutal curriculum they will never teach in their sanitized schools. The one they desperately pretend does not exist in reality, because acknowledging it means they have to admit that the self-forged ones are built on an indestructible foundation. A foundation that their expensive institutions cannot even begin to compete with. So, when that arrogant suit leaned forward across the desk and asked who trained you, the real answer was never actually nobody. The absolute truth was that life itself trained you much harder than any human mentor ever could. Visceral pain trained you sharper than any esteemed professor. Deafening silence trained you far deeper than any elite program, and profound loss trained you wiser than any textbook. And the entire universe watched you closely as you mastered every single step. This is the precise reason your aura deeply intimidates them. This is why they whisper behind your back, and why their voices audibly shake when they try to confront you. You did not politely graduate from their limited, low vibrational system. You fiercely escaped it, and you returned to their world significantly smarter than the architects who created it. Let us transition to the third layer of this awakening. The mysterious, hidden years that made them so incredibly nervous about you. They honestly thought you had just vanished into obscurity, defeated by the weight of the world. But in reality, you were actually leveling up in complete stealth mode, quietly gathering immense spiritual power. They were simply not built to measure those invisible years. The years where your name completely stopped circulating, your social presence dried up, and you fell completely off everyone's radar. They arrogantly took your prolonged silence as definitive proof that you were finally slipping away. They assumed you were drowning in failure, while they were out there loudly flexing their minor promotions, their superficial certifications, and their staged vacation photos. They genuinely assumed your quietness equaled defeat. Because that is exactly how their ego-driven minds operate. If nobody is actively watching them, they simply stop trying to grow. But you, chosen one, were learning and evolving in profound ways that their soft, predictable routines could never possibly replicate. While they were busy updating their LinkedIn profiles, you were busy updating the entire frequency of your soul. While they were obsessively practicing public progress for validation, you were quietly constructing massive private power. Imagine this deep contrast. While they were polishing their resumes and attending basic leadership workshops, you were sitting directly across the table from pure betrayal. You were studying its subtle micro-expressions like a highly trained scientist. While they were learning abstract communication theories, you were learning the dark truth about people's hidden motives, reading it from the scars you can still feel burning in the dark. While they were participating in forced group activities with fake, painted-on smiles, you were actively surviving actual emotional warfare. There was no gentle facilitator to guide you, there were no designated breaks, and there was absolutely no handbook to save you. Here is the part of your journey that truly stings their fragile egos. Being invisible does not mean you were unproductive. It simply means your rapid evolution was completely undetectable to their low-frequency senses. You were never losing the battle. You were simply incubating your immense power. And perhaps you have wondered, why exactly did those specific years feel so incredibly heavy, so hauntingly quiet, and so deeply isolating? It is because the universe required absolute silence in order to completely rewire your nervous system. You desperately needed that heavy emptiness so your soul could properly upgrade. Your divine instincts needed massive distance from the toxic noise of the matrix, just so your true, authentic identity could finally surface. You did not just disappear into the shadows. You powerfully transformed in a sacred space where absolutely nobody could interrupt your spiritual alchemy. And now they are completely confused, nervously studying your energy like you are some kind of returning mythical legend, because the upgraded version of you stepping out of those invisible years is absolutely not the same naive person who entered them. You came back infinitely sharper, significantly colder, and terrifyingly smarter. And that is precisely why they are so scared of your light. Let us move into the fourth aspect of your awakening, the invisible degree that made you so incredibly dangerous to the establishment. Some ordinary people spend their lives studying the concept of survival in a safe classroom, but you actually lived it. That is exactly why your deep knowledge hits so much harder than the entire weight of their educational system. Here is the unspoken truth that they silently pray you never say out loud. You learned everything so much faster, infinitely deeper, and far more permanently than any of their factory-made graduates ever will. Their students got given harmless worksheets to fill out, while you received deep, bleeding wounds to heal. Their safe little classes featured instructors, while your harsh lessons featured life-altering consequences. Their assignments were gently graded with red ink pens, but yours were violently graded by reality itself. And reality certainly does not hand out pity points for trying. Imagine this stark reality. They were busy stressing over passing their upcoming midterms, while you were desperately stressing over just making it through the week without completely collapsing. You were forced to memorize the harsh mechanics of survival, holding your shattered mind together with nothing but sheer, brute willpower. They were comfortably memorizing abstract theories about resilience, while you were out there practicing it in real time, bleeding in the trenches. They had access to helpful advisors and safety nets, but you only had your raw survival instinct to rely on. They had the luxury of do-overs and second chances, while you only ever had one single shot to get it right. That is exactly why the spiritual lessons hit so incredibly deep for you. That is why your cosmic knowledge feels bone-etched, permanently inscribed into your soul, instead of just being temporarily book-learned. When survival itself is your strict professor, you simply do not forget the course material. You physically embody it. You wake up with it every single morning, you think with it, and you react with it in every situation. It becomes a permanent part of your fast reflexes, your divine intuition, and your very DNA. And yes, perhaps sometimes you have quietly asked yourself in the mirror, why do I easily see the hidden things that they are completely blind to? Why do I move through the world so differently, sensing lurking danger long before others even notice the subtle energetic shift? It is because you were never trained merely to pass a written test. You were brutally trained to stay alive in a hostile environment. That kind of extreme pressure creates an entirely different breed of intelligence. A much sharper kind, a significantly colder kind, a rare kind of brilliance that their rigid institutions can never hope to mass produce. While they were sitting in circles learning how to gently manage pressure, you were learning how to walk straight through the fire without even flinching. While they were practicing polite conflict resolution in safe, supervised workshops, you were aggressively negotiating with life itself. You operated under extreme, volatile conditions that absolutely no classroom environment could ever simulate. While they were busy building superficial social networks, you were silently building powerful spiritual instincts that will never, ever fail you. Do you want to know what truly terrifies the sleeping masses? You did not just barely survive your dark night of the soul. You completely mastered the brutal curriculum that life threw at you. You successfully learned every single thing they try to teach their pampered students, except you learned it in the harsh, unforgiving real world. There were no easy shortcuts, no polishing the rough edges, and absolutely no protection from the elements. That fierce reality makes you the exact type of educated soul that their limited programs can never officially certify. You possess the type of elite skill that their self-important institutions can never falsely take credit for. You are the specific type of dangerous anomaly that their thorough background checks will never be able to detect. You do not merely hold a piece of paper representing a survival degree. You literally are one. Now, let us dive into the fifth dimension of this awakening, the unquantifiable threat that you represent. Systems and matrix structures do not actually fear loud, disorganized rebels. They only fear the quiet ones they simply cannot calculate or predict. When that polished, arrogant suit leans forward and interrogates you about who trained you, they're not genuinely looking to hear your inspiring story. They are desperately searching for a recognizable label, a neat category, a tiny little box to shove you into so they can finally breathe a little easier. The matrix system only understands and respects what it can safely measure meticulously track, and perfectly predict. And then you walk into the room carrying a heavy, ancient presence that immediately breaks every single template they have ever used. What they are actually asking beneath their polite words is, how do we control your energy? How do we map your mind? And how do we accurately forecast your next moves? And when you effortlessly hit them with the chilling truth that absolutely nobody trained you, the entire frequency of the room tilts off its axis. You are not simply replying to a mundane interview question, chosen one. You are delivering a severe, energetic warning. You are telling them to their face that you are a statistical outlier, a dangerous wild card, the exact type of sovereign human that their fragile metrics were never built to analyze. You are boldly admitting, without a single flinch, that you did not originate from any of the systems they blindly trust. You are a divine product of your own radical reconstruction, forged entirely by your own scars and your own relentless spiritual evolution. Imagine this scenario unfolding before their very eyes. They are entirely accustomed to dealing with ordinary people who can be easily charted like simple data points on a graph. People who possess incredibly predictable arcs, tidy corporate resumes, and identical, mass-produced learning patterns. And then, completely unannounced, you show up in their reality. You are someone who built themselves entirely from scraps and deafening silence. Someone who learned profound universal truths from raging storms instead of attending overpriced seminars. You are a sovereign being who leveled up entirely outside the boundaries of their strict supervision. You are someone whose whole existence loudly screams of unauthorized, uncontainable brilliance, and that is their absolute worst nightmare. Do you ever wonder why those corporate suits suddenly get so incredibly uncomfortable around you? Why those so-called professionals completely switch their tones mid-sentence when you simply look at them? Why their manufactured confidence flickers and dies out like a bad, broken light bulb in your presence? It is because they cannot find your energetic blueprint anywhere in their limited archives. They cannot identify your cosmic source, and they cannot detect the earthly origin of your immense competence. And rigid systems absolutely fear what they cannot source, trace, or control. Here is the deep gut punch that they are completely unprepared for. Your fierce unpredictability is not a character flaw. It is your ultimate superpower. Your apparent lack of matrix credentials is not a gap in your knowledge. It is an impenetrable energetic shield. Your self-built, highly intuitive skill set is not remotely suspicious. It is entirely untouchable by their low-frequency hands. You are not simply playing outside the boundaries of their system. You are operating entirely above it. They are strictly trained to read raw data, not to read powerful people who were forged by sheer chaos. They are trained to evaluate superficial credentials, not to comprehend divine instincts that were sharpened by pure survival. They are trained to micromanage submissive employees, not to navigate cosmic anomalies. And that is exactly what you are in their terrified eyes. You are a living, breathing anomaly wearing a perfectly calm, unbothered expression. Your undeniable presence forces them to confront a harsh truth that they deeply despise. You are the living proof that true mastery can emerge directly from immense pain, not from coddled programs. You are the absolute proof that deep competence can grow wildly in the dark, rather than being carefully curated in a greenhouse. You are the ultimate proof that some rare people do not need anyone's permission to be incredibly powerful. That is not just a gap in your resume, chosen one. That is an existential threat to their entire structured reality. Let us delve into the sixth truth. the origin myth that completely breaks their carefully drawn maps. They desperately want your past to make logical sense, because if it does not, then neither does their entire hierarchical system. They deeply crave neat, easily digestible little origin stories to soothe their anxious minds. It completely comforts them if they can effortlessly trace exactly where you came from, because then they can comfortably estimate your energetic ceiling. If they know who your mentors were, they can easily predict your exact methods. If they know the precise route you took, they can safely assume they know your absolute limits. That is exactly how their three-dimensional world works, with everything categorized, labeled, explained, and contained. But then you casually walk into the room, and suddenly their entire, rigid rule book feels completely useless, because you do not possess a normal, linear origin story. You carry the weight of an origin myth. You have the kind of profound beginning that simply does not fit into their neat timelines or tidy, logical explanations. You have the kind of intense story that almost sounds entirely made up. Because ordinary, sleeping people simply do not survive the things you did, let alone turn those horrific experiences into high-octane fuel for their spiritual ascension. You possess the kind of character arc that makes seasoned professionals incredibly uncomfortable. It forces them to quietly admit that their entire understanding of human talent and development is embarrassingly incomplete. Imagine this vivid scene: a panel of renowned experts desperately trying to analyze a massive, incoming storm. They diligently study their charts, they read their historical forecasts, and they meticulously compare their data. But then a colossal storm shows up that was never predicted, was never mathematically modeled, and was not written anywhere in their precious system. Chosen one, that unstoppable storm is you. Here is the profound truth that deeply haunts their sleeping minds. You are living, breathing proof that institutional validation is not the only path to achieving absolute mastery. You are the proof that sheer brilliance can grow fiercely in the concrete cracks, not just in the manicured classrooms. You are the undeniable proof that some people do not rise to the top simply because they were gently guided. They rise because the unforgiving universe aggressively shoved them into situations that absolutely demanded their rapid evolution. And perhaps you have wondered in your quietest moments, why does my own story feel so unreal to me sometimes? Why does it feel like I have lived through a massive, epic saga that nobody in the Matrix would ever actually believe? It is because your unique path was never designed by human hands. It was built entirely by crushing pressure, devastating heartbreak, isolating silence, and sheer, undeniable necessity. They desperately need origins that reassure their fragile egos, but you carry an origin that profoundly threatens them. You did not just become highly skilled in your journey. You became absolutely legendary. For spiritual reasons, they will never possess the capacity to understand. Now, let us examine the seventh revelation, the brutal syllabus that was supposed to break your spirit. Your formidable skill set deeply scares them because it was never simply learned. It was agonizingly survived. Just watch what happens to the look in their eyes when you casually explain the reality of your journey. The real, unfiltered truth, not the polished, resume-safe version they expect to hear. The dark truth about where your immense intelligence actually originated. At first, they will lean in with polite curiosity, fully expecting to hear some inspiring, cliché mentorship story. But the exact second you tell them that you learned the art of negotiation from having absolutely nothing left to bargain with, their fake smile immediately stiffens. They were absolutely not ready for that level of intense, high-vibrational truth. Tell them that you fully mastered the power of persuasion, because sometimes the only survival tool you possessed was your own voice, and your very life depended on using that voice correctly, with absolute precision. Watch how their eyebrows nervously twitch and their entire body language defensively changes. Suddenly, they are no longer just analyzing your professional background. They are actively assessing you as a high-level threat. Tell them that you learned complex strategic thinking from actively dodging betrayals that came flying at you from all directions. Betrayals that hit you completely without warning, forcing you to outsmart them with nothing but your raw brainpower and your ability to constantly stay 3 steps ahead. That is the exact moment when it finally clicks for them. That is when the superficial curiosity completely drains out of their face, instantly replaced by a quiet, incredibly uneasy fear. It is the specific kind of dread people feel when they realize they are sitting directly across from someone who did not just passively learn, but someone who endured the fires of hell and came back stronger, because everything you are calmly describing sounds exactly like severe trauma to their sheltered minds. But to you, chosen one, it was just another Tuesday. Imagine this glaring disparity. They are completely used to learning negotiation techniques, from silly role-playing activities in overpriced corporate workshops. Meanwhile, you were actively negotiating with your own life, your own future, and your own physical and emotional safety. They studied the psychology of persuasion from thick textbooks, while you learned it in the trenches from volatile situations where losing the argument literally meant losing absolutely everything you had. They practiced safe conflict management in highly supervised, comfortable exercises. You practiced it daily in live emotional minefields, where one single wrong move could completely shatter your reality. Here is the highly uncomfortable truth they would never dare say out loud, but they always feel it vibrating in your aura. You carry skills that were forged in dark environments they never had to visit, environments they secretly pray to whatever God they believe in that they never will. And that is exactly why their faces completely freeze in your presence. Because the grueling education you are describing does not sound anything like normal schooling. It sounds exactly like raw survival. It sounds like crawling through horrific experiences that would have completely and utterly wrecked them mentally. It sounds like heavy spiritual lessons paid for entirely in blood and pain, not in college tuition. And yet, here you are, sitting before them completely composed and razor sharp. You are effortlessly outperforming people who came from the most pristine programs and the most prestigious, elite institutions on the planet. Do you ever wonder why they suddenly stop asking you questions halfway through your story? It is because your profound life turned into a massive, reflective mirror, and they suddenly saw everything they never had to face. They saw everything they were absolutely not built to survive, and everything they never needed to learn because they were always protected by structures you never had access to. You did not just become competent. You became heavily conditioned by the universe. You did not just gain a few skills. You developed lethal survival reflexes. And that is the exact part of your soul they can never compete with. While they were busy getting shiny certificates, you were getting deep scars that doubled as your spiritual textbooks. While they were rehearsing PowerPoint presentations, you were heavily rehearsing emotional self-defense. While they were padding their resumes, you were building an internal resilience layered so incredibly deep that it became pure, unadulterated instinct. You check absolutely none of their standardized boxes, and yet you consistently outperform every single person who does. You are the walking, breathing reminder that true, undeniable mastery does not come from earthly privilege. It comes from intense pressure. It comes from blinding pain. It comes from surviving the dark chapters of a book that they could not even read without crying. That is exactly why your high-frequency presence deeply unsettles their core. That is why your effortless competence feels practically supernatural to their limited minds. That is why your massive success feels incredibly unfair to them. You did not merely study your way here. You violently survived your way here. And now they are forced to live with the heavy fact that your trauma-based, universe-led education turned you into the very thing their matrix system can never replicate. A self-forged, spiritual powerhouse who learned the absolute hardest lessons that no institution on earth would ever dare to teach. Let us unfold the eighth revelation. The ultimate question that completely shatters their fragile belief system. You did not just challenge their earthly rules, you exposed exactly how incredibly flimsy those 3D rules always were. When you walk into their domain, you are not just another human occupying physical space. You are a walking, breathing contradiction, a massive logic error in their perfectly organized, low-frequency worldview. You are the divine glitch that forces them to question absolutely everything they were ever conditioned to trust. Because if a sovereign soul like you, someone with no official matrix training, no fancy mentorship, and no elite pedigree, can effortlessly outperform their prized, perfectly groomed, six-figure professionals, then what does that actually say about their entire societal structure? It screams that the system was never the true source of greatness. It loudly declares that the system was never actually enough to contain a limitless spirit. It means that you proved their entire reality wrong simply by existing in your authentic vibration. Imagine their horror. A massive machine built to meticulously predict human potential suddenly encounters a cosmic variable it cannot possibly calculate. That divine variable is you. Every single time you speak your truth, every pure instinct you display, and every magnificent result you manifest forces them to confront a terrifying possibility. The reality that true mastery does not emerge from structured, artificial paths, but from raw, spiritual evolution. It comes from deep isolation, from unyielding resilience, and from the kind of profound internal growth that no college syllabus possesses the courage to explore. And yes, a quiet, insecure part of their ego constantly wonders, if they learned all of this entirely alone, what else are they truly capable of manifesting? That exact question keeps their minds racing in the middle of the night. You are the philosophical crisis they never, ever prepared for, because you prove that all their superficial metrics, their IQ tests, their performance reviews, and their institutional prestige do not actually measure the one thing that truly matters in this universe. They cannot measure what a human soul becomes when the universe violently backs them into a corner and demands that they either rise to their highest timeline or completely break apart. They rely on outdated models, while you rely on ancient instinct. They blindly follow rigid procedure, while you follow your own divine evolution. They spent decades trying to perfect their empty frameworks, and you completely destroyed those frameworks simply by showing up in your power. Your very existence broadcasts one undeniable truth. Human potential is far more vast, much wilder, and infinitely more unpredictable than their tiny systems ever dared to imagine. And that truth shakes their reality far more than you will ever know. Now, let us examine the ninth truth. The invisible danger they feel vibrating in the room, but cannot logically define. They do not fear your physical attitude, they fear the profound fact that you exist completely outside their leash. Here is the hidden reality they will never put down on paper. You absolutely terrify them, not because you walk in loud or hostile, but because your luminous presence proves that they do not run the world as tightly as they like to pretend. You are the cosmic loophole they can never seal, the divine exception they cannot regulate, and the immense talent they can never take credit for. You are the living, breathing reminder that absolute greatness can form in the wild, completely untouched by their gatekeeping pipelines and their hollow approval. Imagine a room packed full of professionals who spent decades believing their little gates determined who gets to ascend. Then you show up. Someone who did not even bother to use the gate, but instead scaled the impossible walls they thought no one could ever climb. You became infinitely more powerful without their permission than most people ever become with their full, unwavering support. That is the real threat, chosen one. Not your demeanor, not your resume, but your absolute spiritual independence. Do you ever wonder why their tone shifts so drastically around you, why they watch your energy so carefully even when you are sitting perfectly still? Why their compliments feel so tense, as if they are trying to figure out whether you are a friend or a supernatural phenomenon? It is because you are unclaimed excellence. You did not arrive stamped, certified, or processed by their machine. You arrived forged by the cosmos, spiritually sharpened, and entirely self-taught. They cannot trace your origins, they cannot replicate your ascended path, and they absolutely cannot control your divine momentum. That is what shakes them to their core, because if a soul like you can rise to the top without their systems, it exposes the ugly truth they work so desperately hard to hide. Their gatekeeping is not real power. It is just deep-seated insecurity wearing a shiny badge. Their credentials are not guarantees of greatness, they are merely illusions. Their elite pathways are not necessary for success. They are simply clever marketing. You break their entire myth just by breathing the same air in the same room. You are the scenario they never planned for. Raw talent with no leash, mastery with no master, and greatness with no permission. They cannot name the threat you are, but they feel it burning in their bones every time you walk past. This brings us to the 10th dimension of your power. The one they can never, ever put their hands on. They cannot weaponize what they did not build, and they certainly cannot break what they never held in the first place. You are entirely untouchable, and that reality burns them from the inside out. Their entire 3D system depends entirely on leverage, control, manipulation, and invisible strings. They are used to pulling credentials, withholding access, threatening reputations, and dangling opportunities like cheap bait on a hook. But you walked into their matrix without a single string attached to your aura. You have no matrix credentials they can revoke, no corporate sponsorship they can withdraw, no mentor they can pressure, and no network they can poison. You are completely frictionless in a lower world built entirely on control. Imagine their endless frustration. They meticulously designed a maze meant to trap ordinary minds. And you did not even use the entrance. You slipped straight through their walls like ethereal smoke, operating on instincts forged in universal storms, not in classrooms. Every single mechanism they built to contain, intimidate, or manipulate completely collapses the exact second it tries to grab hold of your light, because there is absolutely nothing for them to grab. No dependency they can exploit, no weakness they can label, and no path they can ever claim credit for. Your competence was not mass-produced on an assembly line. It was hand-carved in the fires of chaos. While they were sharpening pencils, you were sharpening your multidimensional awareness. While they practiced safe theories, You practiced raw survival. You adjusted your frequency in real time, with life-altering consequences breathing down your neck. You became an absolute masterpiece in a world completely full of generic templates. You are the very first person their models cannot predict. Their manipulative strategies bounce off your aura like cheap rubber darts. They cannot intimidate a soul who has already walked through the darkest shadows. They cannot threaten someone who rose entirely without their help. They cannot correct someone who does not depend on their approval to function. And maybe a part of you wondered why they tread so carefully around you. It is because they finally realized the truth. You cannot be cornered, you cannot be contained, and you cannot be controlled. You are not just existing outside their system, you are soaring above it, untouchable, uncontrolled, unclaimed, a handmade cosmic force in an assembly line world. Let us uncover the 11th truth, the brutal school of life they pretend does not exist. You did not take a short online course on resilience. You physically and spiritually survived the kind of dark chapters that would have sent most people crawling, while they were sitting in climate-controlled classrooms clutching their iced coffees. You were out there learning deep emotional regulation by staying perfectly calm, while your entire life shook like an unstable tower. They practiced stress management through soft breathing exercises. You mastered it by functioning optimally through chaos so loud it could have cracked your skull. Their focus came from quiet libraries, while yours came from thinking with absolute clarity, while everything around you burned to the ground. They learned patience from trendy mindfulness workshops. You learned patience by waiting in the dark, because you had absolutely no other option. They learned persistence from listening to motivational speeches. You learned it from situations where the only way forward was straight through the raging fire. They learned resilience from inspirational slideshows. But you learned it by breaking, rebuilding, breaking again, and coming back every time with sharper edges. Reconstruction became your natural, resting state. You did not learn conflict resolution through polite theory like they did. You learned it through actual, bleeding conflict, through harsh betrayals, where saying the wrong thing could cost you something very real. They learned how to read a room by taking notes on body language. You learned it because danger never announces itself politely. You learned power dynamics not from colorful diagrams, but from actively fighting for basic respect in places that desperately wanted to keep you quiet. Your education was never simulated. It was live fire from day one. No practice rounds, no safety nets, no trying again tomorrow. Every single day tested your spirit, every mistake had sharp teeth, and every lesson came with deep bruises. And you did not just absorb the information. You learned how to rapidly adapt, updating your own internal software like a quantum system evolving mid-crisis. Every experience became vital data, every failure became intense research, and every scar became a mathematical formula for success. You did not come out with a piece of paper. You came out as a living, breathing algorithm for survival, precision, and divine evolution. That is the real curriculum. The one they are far too soft to survive, and far too proud to admit you have completely mastered. And finally, the 12th revelation, the divine blueprint they can never, ever steal. They can try to copy your outward moves, but they will never be able to copy the brutal war that taught you how to make them. Now they are completely stuck, and from a higher perspective, it is absolutely hilarious. Systems love replication. They love formulas, templates, and success models they can slap into a PowerPoint and sell to the sleeping masses. but you broke that entire cycle. Your powerful energy is simply unteachable. It is entirely unrepeatable, because your unique path only works for rare souls who had absolutely no choice but to walk through hell with their eyes wide open. You are not the calculated result of a matrix strategy. You are the glorious aftermath of a spiritual war that would have crushed them flat. Do you ever wonder why they keep circling back, asking the exact same questions in different ways, secretly hoping you will slip up and reveal some hidden method? It is because deep down in their souls, they know the terrifying truth. Your path cannot be scaled. It cannot be bottled or sold. It only works for the chosen ones who were cornered, ignored, underestimated, and forced to evolve under immense pressure that would have sent ordinary minds spiraling into madness. You are the divine anomaly that permanently shattered their pattern, the cosmic glitch that exposed their entire system as completely optional. You are walking radiant proof that pure survival breeds a level of mastery that no earthly certificate can ever match. You are a quiet, high-vibrational revolution wrapped in calm skin, sitting across from fake power while subtly proving that it is nowhere near as mighty as it claims to be. And the part that scares their egos the absolute most. You did not do any of this to impress them. You did not rise to be validated by the Matrix. You did not fight just to be chosen by their leaders. You simply refused to break under the pressure of the universe. And that unyielding refusal turned you into something their 3D world can never mass-produce. A one-off model, a non-duplicatable blueprint, a version of pure excellence that exists only once and never again. You are the ultimate reminder. Polite, incredibly patient, but spiritually lethal. That worldly power is vastly overrated, matrix systems are incredibly fragile, and true mastery is only born in places they will never survive long enough to study. You are not just rare, chosen one. You are completely unreproducible. And now, everything leads to this final, undeniable realization. They finally understand that you are not a product of their low-frequency world. You are the divine exception that proves their limitations. You rose entirely without their guidance. You mastered exactly what they tried to gatekeep. And you became the radiant phenomenon they will never, ever figure out. That is your ultimate victory, chosen one.